Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to everyone joining from different corners of the world. I'm Anugrah, and on behalf of Tribal Design Forum, I want to wish you all a very happy World Indigenous Day. This day, declared by the United Nations in 1994, is a moment for reflection, connection, and celebration. But for us as Indigenous people, it is also something much older, a tradition of sitting together, sharing stories, and imagining the future we want for our people. Tribal Design Forum is delighted to bring together voices at TribalFutures 2.0 from Aotearoa, New Zealand, El Salvador, Meghalaya, and Jharkhand as well as Gujarat, each carrying their land, language, and traditions into the world through design, storytelling, and cultural leadership. Let me introduce our four wonderful speakers for today in the order they will appear. Frida, Larios, a visual communicator and designer from El Salvador who reimagines Mayan hieroglyphics in contemporary ways, breathing new life into an ancient visual language. Desna Schollum, a Maori designer and strategist from Aotearoa, who weaves together Indigenous knowledge, land, and people into design practice and cultural advocacy. Rida Ghatphoh, a musician, storyteller, and designer from Meghalaya, whose work threads Khasi traditions with deep community love. And we have Sudhir John Horo, a designer of frameworks and currently heading the Adivasi Academy in Gujarat, which is India's only tribal-led institution. We are honored to have them here today with us. And now, before we begin, let's immerse ourselves in the sounds and spirit of our communities with a short video.
Azoma tendong lung perbojo. Zop verlago di korsho, lop ik zoban go bamsho. Zop verlago di korsho, lop ik zoban go bamsho. Segi sona kita menyin long jung segor go thor non sho. Segi sona kita menyin long jung segor go thor non sho. Keng bertam seke kebego ago sembeneng diglo bosho. Keng bertam seke kebego ago sembeneng diglo bosho. Dung go dung kifo vang go fleo vang lem bosho. Kyong kyong go kenyung flo lung den lung i vang thing bosho. Dung go dung kifo vang go fleo vang lem bosho. Kyong kyong go kenyung flo lung den lung i vang thing bosho.
Kung Kung Ko, written by the Lepcha band Sophium. They are from the Sikkim and Darjeeling Hills. This song is written from the perspective of the wild animals who dwell in the deep jungles of the Himalayan forest, which they call their home. This song, it encapsulates the beauty of the majestic Himalayan region, which is seen through the lens of nature itself. It's the story of home, the anxiety of their homes being uprooted, their sacred lands being destroyed, but it is also about the resilience of our majestic nature that we call home. Today, as we celebrate World Indigenous Day, let us also draw upon our stories, stories of resilience, adaptability, and fortitude as we continue forward in this session. And now I give this time over to Sudhir.
Thank you, Anugrah, for that lovely context that you've set. And thanks a lot for Sophium for having allowed us to show this song that in very many ways encapsulates the lives of indigenous people and their relevance and connection to land. So greetings to all of you on this occasion of World Indigenous Day. Kia ora, Desna, Payush, Frida, Kumno, Rida, and Johar to everyone else. This is not going to be a session like one usually is used to. It is not going to be academic in nature. It is going to be four people sitting together from different corners of the world, from indigenous communities, getting together to have a conversation. In 2010, I had visualized and conceptualized a framework called India Future of Change, where the basic idea and the starting and the origin point was me being a person coming from Munda community in Jharkhand, in India. I imagined growing up looking at National Geographic pictures where we heard of the Maori community, we saw the Andean mountains, uh, but then everything suddenly disappeared. So while growing up, it was always a wonderment uh, to see what would it be like if people like me from indigenous communities could connect and have a conversation. It has taken almost 15 years today to be in this position where people from different time zones have come together voluntarily. In fact, Frida has had to get up at 4:30 a.m. in the morning. She volunteered to do that. That was the starting point. And then Desna, in the other side of the world in New Zealand, she agreed to stay up late at 10:30. So that's her time zone. And Rida and I, we are slightly in a privileged position, uh, but we are very thankful to Frida and Desna for having made this possible. So today, the conversations that we'll have will be around our communities and our land. But to begin with, I would start with a question for each one of them. Maybe we can start with Desna first. What does Indigenous Day really mean for you? Why is it important, or why is it not important? Desna?
Uh, Kia ora horo, first up ngā mihi nui koutou ko rongomawa wahine me ka ngunu me ngā te pāhuera ngā iwi ko ngai tau matawhaiti tuku hapu no mahia hau ko Desna Whanga Schollum tōku ingoa. So my name is Desna Whanga Schollum, and yeah, as thank you for our beautiful friends for hosting us tonight. Yeah, it's a privilege to be able to spend this time with a lot of other Indigenous creatives, which, yeah, in answer to your question, Horo, is I think that's what's really important to me. That really resonates with me, that you say that you've been on a 15-year journey to get this this gathering together. We've been really similar with Ngā Aho, the Māori Designers Network, which I've been a founding member of, and also is how I met the sister Frida quite a number of years ago. But similarly, I grew up somewhere extremely remote, which I think my mum will vouch for because she's online tonight. The power just came back on at home, which is great. But yeah, it's a long way away from where I grew up too, and it's pretty amazing to be able to see how many Indigenous people are connecting these days, and well, primarily obviously online, but also had an amazing opportunity last year to go and visit the sis Frida in her territory as well, and that time kanohi ki te kanohi, or face to face and shoulder to shoulder is really, really heartwarming. So yeah, that's what it makes me think of. I mean, it's just such a long way away from the way that I grew up, and it's amazing to be able to be invited to speak in these kind of events. Kia ora.
Yeah, Frida, would you like to go next? Hello.
Yakpeina muchia nehemet, naha ninemi Frida, nusuntuga Larios, nutechan la libertad. Buenos días, mi nombre es Frida, mi apellido es Larios y mi comunidad está en la libertad. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Frida. My surname is Larios, and I come from La Libertad in El Salvador, in Central America. Central America, the stringy bit of America, so that you can picture it. And I'm very happy to be celebrating World Indigenous Peoples Day. It is very timely and apt that we're celebrating in this way from different corners of the global South. We are not North, we're center, but we're very close. The more and more I've gotten to know Desna, Sister Desna, the more I see more similarities in the Pacific cultures, and I'm part of that Pacific culture. My my whole family lineage from my maternal side is from La Libertad, from the coast, and so we're connected in that way, and also, of course, connected to Sudhir, our kind host, leader, and creator, thinker, interconnector of everything. Thank you for hosting the Tribal Design Forum, for resisting, persisting, and holding this space for new generations, for our past generations. Our ancestors are here today, and I just want to say Padiush, Susul Padiush, muchas gracias. Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, Frida. And people, for all that you might, for all those who might be seeing Desna and Frida for the first time here, They have been on the Tribal Design platform earlier, and both Frida and Desna have been the earliest supporters of Tribal Design Forum. I remember our third and the first international edition of Tribal Design Forum in 2021 was the time when Frida came and shared her wonderful work, which gave us an insight into our friends in the other part of the world. And then she again came later in 2023 when TDF was organizing its boot camp. And Desna, of course, she has been playing a key role in connecting us with young and very talented indigenous folks from Aotearoa who have presented some amazing work that has given us more context to understand what indigenous design is. So thank you, Frida and Desna, for always being part of us. Rida, what are your thoughts on what Indigenous Day means?
Hello, Horo. Thank you. Really glad to be a part of this platform today. And to start with, I'd really like to, wish everyone a very happy World Indigenous Day. And for me, my thoughts on the indigenous people, since, I come from the state of Meghalaya, which is in the northeast of India. And predominantly, we are indigenous tribes of three communities, which is the Khasi, the Jaintias, and the Garus. But yeah, as a child, I'm a mix of Jaintia and Khasi, since we have a system here. So as a child, I always thought that we are indigenous people. I never thought that, we are very white, and the world is now, at that time it was very small. But later on, I realized that, we hold a very distinctive meaning to what we are here. And one of the few remaining tribes here in the world, I would say, we still follow the matrilineal system, and that's very special, I realized. So for me, I think coming from a very small part of India and the northeastern part, it was very disconnected back when I was a child. And then when I moved out, I kind of see many things, the larger part of what we are. And then I realized, so over the years, for me, it's like, the exposure that I got when I moved out of my land and came back here, to Meghalaya after, years of my experience. So I'm the founder of Ducty Craft. I would just like to say a little bit on Ducty, because Ducty is a social enterprise and it's based here in Shillong, which is the capital of Meghalaya. The name Ducty actually is a Khasi word, which means the impressions of the hand. It also means to protect the hand, and also it's with the hand. So for me, when we started, looking at what we are as a community here in Meghalaya, we came about with the key focus to help maintain traditional art forms by involving many communities, especially the artisans community, also the creative professionals together in the area of innovation, marketing, and also with the approach, like sustainability, where we see here in Meghalaya. So for me, being a part of this forum and talking about where I come from, it would be a very much to share about what the journey is all about for me when I came back, actually. And for us, it's the practices here. And in my practice, when I look at preserving intangible cultural heritage and indigenous craft traditions and taking a more holistic approach. So while elevating a much needed attention to whatever is intangible cultural heritage, is what I would like to share in this platform, I think, in this journey. So for me, it's more of, realizing where I am at this point in my life, because in the past we were very different, and currently and what we look in the future. So I hope that we would still be able to value what we have. Yes, Horo, I
Excellent.
hope this covers
No,
the
no,
question.
it's lovely that you've got the work of all the artisans from the communities such splendidly displayed behind you. And in a way, you've also given a short introduction of you and your work. I think we can do a small round here also for rest of our friends so that our audience can get a better understanding of what kind of work they do. So Frida and Desna, with your permission, I'd like to screen share something, and maybe it'll be nice if you can take us through some of this work. But before you do that, allow me to introduce and give a basic background of each one of you. So Frida Larios is from the Nava community, born in Costa Rica and raised in El Salvador, is a celebrated visual and sculptural artist whose work reimagines ancient Maya writing systems in a contemporary manner. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from University College Falmouth in Cornwall, England, and a Masters of Arts degree in Communication Design from Central St. Martin's College of Art and Design, University of the Arts, London, England. A former Central American beach volleyball gold medalist, she has taught at the London College of Fashion and Camberwell College of the Arts, been an adjunct professor and lecturer in visual literacy and design foundations at American University and University of the District of Columbia. A distinctive pictoglyphs, a contemporary reinterpretation of Maya script, have been featured in prominent exhibitions, including the Looking Glass at American University Museum and solo shows like Maya Alphabet of Modern Times at Katzen Art Center. She has also designed the Lima 2019 Pan American Games uniforms for El Salvador's Olympic Committee, bridging art, identity, and cultural renewal. So with that introduction, Frida, if you can just give us an insight into these two works of you, because it is very related to the language and the wisdom of a community. And I think it has been very timely intervention for you, for your community. And we would like to understand how is it that you came across this idea of creating the new Maya language? How did it begin? Because from what I know, I think it began from the need of intergenerational transfer of information and wisdom, which was lacking. And that is what you filled up. So Frida, if you can just tell us a little bit more about the new Maya language and the animal story.
Hey. Okay, now I am unmuted. First of all, let me just, let's say, clarify that this is a visual regeneration and is related to the spoken word, but of the ancestral spoken word, which the hieroglyphics speak, if that makes sense. Because in our contemporary times and our living communities, there's more than 300 languages, not dialects, languages in the Central American and Mexican region, what's called Mesoamerica. That's the, let's say, ancestral or pre-colonial Central America is called Mesoamerica. That's an academic term. And so these languages are living and, belong to each community, but my work refers to, the hieroglyphics that were used all across these Mesoamerican territories since more or less 300 after Christ until more or less 900 after Christ, which is called the classic period of, the prolific period of the Mayan civilization. So what's very unique to our heritage is that this is the only hieroglyphic script in the Americas, and it was very much, like in use for, let's say, 1,000 years or more, and it was intercommunication between all the city states, or the main, let's call them, capitals of the Mesoamerican territories. And it was used in basically as a way of recording history, and recording the narrative of these governments of these cities. Let's say, in the middle, imagine in the middle of the forest, right? And so were applied in multimedia, in ceramics, in textiles, in murals, in stone carvings, in ceremonial sites. It was, for me, it's simply breathtaking just to realize that the scope. And so then going back to my community and my country specifically, there's a lot of there was historically, let's say, ethnocides that happened after the colonial, or the invasion of the Spanish in 1492. That colonial legacy, took us to 1932 and a genocide of 32,000, 1% of our indigenous population. And that stripped us from our traditional dress, our language, our way of, weaving our hair. Everything was more or less whitewashed, because we didn't want to identify, because that meant we would be prosecuted by the military. There were military governments at that time, at the beginning of the 1900s, end of the 1800s, in El Salvador and in the neighboring territories. So that history took me to, and of course, the inspiration of my grandmother, who was a Nawa speaker in some words. She didn't speak fluently; she lost it. But I do remember all her teachings, and the current application of graphic design, and that takes me to our new, our current present generations. It was in this region very, very much westernized. And so that was, my journey to, let's say, unearth my own lineage, and through this, try and bridge intergenerations, like you stated at the beginning.
Excellent, Frida. I think from what I recall, you had also used these hieroglyphs in a very innovative way to narrate stories from your community to your own children, and further also develop plays and toys based on this. So this actually gives us a great example of how a designer from an indigenous community can understand their own requirements, which is culturally very centric, very sacred, and to come up with solutions that can bridge generations. Frida, if you can just talk a little bit about these interesting animals that we see, Why did you decide to do this, and how is it important for your community?
And I'll keep it short because I think I took a long time in the first one, so sorry. These are called the animales interiores, or the in English the interior animals. It's almost the same. Or nahuales this is the same word in Mayan and in Nahua languages. Nahuales are the so-called spirit animals. You know, in a Western manner, people call them like that, but they're basically the calendar, our calendar, and it's the energy of each day has a nahual. So every day, it's not like the Gregorian, colonial calendar, that we're ruled by the time, right? And that makes us, how would you say, dominated by that time. And this is the contrary. These nahuales belong to the weaving of Mother Earth, and they have a specific reason to exist every day because of the cycles of the stars, the cycles of harvesting, the cycles of women and giving birth. And so these are 9, they're 20. The calendar is of 20 days, 20 energies. And 13, so it's 270-day calendar, 13 numbers. And so the first one is the fish. The second one, from left to right, from top to bottom, is the toad, the serpiente, the serpent, or a quat, the firefly, kukai, the bat, and I lost the image, but they're animals of the underworld.
Yeah. So I think it's quite fascinating that you have picked up elements from your community, which is sacred in a way, and also in very many ways talks about the worldviews that your people and your community adhere to. And it's interesting to note that a person from the community has developed these for the benefit of the people and their own communities. So great. So people, all those who might be interested in knowing more about Frida's work, you can visit her website, www.fridalarios.com. You'll find lots of amazing work and also the background stories. So please visit so that you can see what kind of interesting work is being done in the other side of the world. Now maybe we can move to Desna.
Thank you.
Just a short introduction for Desna. Desna Wanga Schollum, deeply rooted in the indigenous community of Ati Rongomai Waine, please pardon my pronunciation, is an artist, design leader, and Maori design activator. With a Master of Science Communication from Otago University, her thesis, Articulating a Matwaranga Maori, or Sense of Place, reflects her commitment to integrating indigenous Maori knowledge and wisdom into contemporary narratives. A founding member and chair of Horo, Maori Design Professionals, Desna champions indigenous representation in design through advocacy, governance, and creative practice. Her extensive roles include Chair of Art Space Aotearoa and trustee or board member of several art institutions. Her work spans design, science communication, and cultural strategy, making significant contributions locally and internationally. Desna has recently worked on developing the visual brand of Tauho Hoko, indigenizing trade and initiative, which we hope Desna can tell us a little bit more about. So Desna, is it fine if we can speak about indigenizing trade?
Yeah, you dropped me in the deep end there, but totally. That's kia ora for that introduction, and ngā mihi, sis Frida, for sharing some of your work again. It's always super inspiring to hear about your place in people and temporality and energies. So yeah, beautiful. Horo, so the Tau Hoko Hoko indigenizing trade brand, which you see in front of you, we've just launched that in Osaka earlier this week at the World Trade Expo. There's a large delegation of Māori business and iwi leaders and actually mainly put together by my tribe, by my iwi, Ngāti Kahungunu, that have gone over to spend some time in I think largely the Australian pavilion, but they've put together an Indigenous program. So our brand, our project was part of that Tau Hokoko. We're looking at, it's a 5-year research project looking into how we might be able to develop international Indigenous trade agreements. Which is interesting territory for me because obviously I'm a recidivist artist and designer and much more on the visual side of things than I am on the maths and economics and data side of things. But so far it's really interesting, and there's definitely, there's correlations between the way that we see the world, to be honest, with our weaving and with our carving and the patterns that we see in nature, and from coming at it from those side of things, finding it not quite so foreign to start looking at data science. But yeah, it's a pretty ambitious project. We've got 5 of us on the research leadership team, including on the Honourable Nanaya Mahuta, who is our research lead, and she's a long-time personality in New Zealand's government, was our Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade for 6 years, formidable Māori woman who's an amazing leader. So, I'm really lucky to be working with Nanaya. What we hope to do essentially is to, actually, I'm not telling you anything new here, that all of the international trade agreements that we've currently got around the world are based on a Western concept, and that it's fairly easy to be able to understand that we could be doing a lot better in terms of, and it's urgent to do a lot better to be able to look after the well-being of ourselves, the well-being of our places, that there are different things that we would want to be able to nurture within a trade agreement if that came from a more sort of Indigenous-centric way of seeing the world. And we hope that we're coming from a mana motuhake, which is a very strong sort of Māori sovereign concept of our identity, but we hope that through that research period we'll be able to sort of uncover some things that would be shareable with our other Indigenous brothers and sisters around the world, and that everybody might be able to pick up on and riff on a little bit. The majority of our researchers are based here in Aotearoa, and we also have researchers that are in Norway, the North Americas, Hawaii, basically around the Pacific, and yeah, so it's fairly early days yet, but really, really interesting work to be a part of. Hopefully that was vaguely useful.
No, it's very useful because usually people think that people from Indigenous communities cannot do business, or rather cannot do business together, or cannot do business with each other. So congratulations to your people for having launched this research project, and I hope it can open new doors and also inspire people like us to develop our own models and frameworks that fits into the global system. I don't know how helpful that can be, but I'm sure it'll be a different form of engagement, and that is something that might be very critical for us.
Well, I mean, there are. I'm not going to homogenize us all because obviously you're not Indigenous if you don't know. You've got a fairly exact place that you come from in the planet. But I do notice and appreciate with all of these forums is just like there's always that respect for your place, and there's respect for your elders, and there's a care and a nurturing that comes first and foremost, I think, in the way that we go about doing our work, and our concepts of reciprocity. I've found too with my travels, and when I've been lucky enough to spend some time with Indigenous peoples from other lands, our concepts of reciprocity are quite different than a sort of a Western trade type of model. So there's a lot to give, and obviously the current capitalist, imperialist, patriarchal shenanigans that's going on around most of the world is not really working for us. So some new models would be great.
Yeah. So we also, with very bated breath, we shall wait for the outcomes of the research. But now I'd like to move slightly closer to what is to your heart, art, and other creative things that you do. And since your thesis was also on the indigenous knowledge system of the Maori and how it connects to the land, it'll be nice for us to know how your land and your community informs what you do in the creative forms.
Well, actually, probably closer to the image that's in the background of my video is of me being a researcher, but partially, sorry, my photography from me being my mum's research assistant on our tribal, on our treaty of Waitangi claims. That's one of the most fundamental pieces of work that I've been involved in. It's really unusual because we're able to have some small contracts from the Crown side of things to do the research for our people. That was an extremely unusual situation, and that was quite a number of years where we went out and visited with our clan and with our tribe different sacred sites and recorded these for the purposes of theoretically for our treaty claims, but really, I mean, the wealth of it, which is what we all still really, draw upon now, sort of 10, 12, maybe longer years since that, is the time that we were actually able to spend out on those sites, because a lot of those sites we never get to visit together. Or we went out with some of our elders who were, say, in their 70s, and they've never been able to see them until that point either. So to be able to go there as a clan all together, tell our stories on those places and record them for the benefit of our people was just, that in and of itself is so much more valuable than anything that we would ever be able to, that comes back to us in that claim. But really, that's just one example. I'm living back in my Tūranga Waiwai now, my place to stand in the world, or my tribal territories. It's where I was born and raised. I left, had to go to boarding school basically because it's very remote areas. But just always coming home. It's woven through. The more time I've spent away from home, like, doing things like university or traveling, etc., which, if those of us that are fortunate to be able to do that does, we learn a lot, but always, I guess, with the intent of being able to bring that home. But the more time I spend away from home with different people, the more I've realized that, like, my culture and the way that I've been brought up is just, it's the entire way that I see the world. It's sort of, I didn't realize how different it was until I spent a lot of time elsewhere, and then I started realizing what things about me and my family are very Māori. That's, it can be hard to see that sometimes because obviously, I'm very white presenting. And also because I don't have our language. My grandparents had to make the decision for very good reasons in their generation, that it wasn't really safe for their daughters to learn the language or advisable. My mum's gone back and learnt it later on, and my aunties have tried to do that too. And I'm learning some now. I have a little bit. I'd like to have a lot more when I stop paying more mortgages to the imperialist patriarchy again, those fellas. It's just my culture and my love for place and my love for our people and the way that we connect with each other. It gives you a sense of purpose, yeah? But I just cannot be one of those designers that sells more shit to more people because they don't particularly need it just by making it look good, like why would you want to spend your life doing that? So I think we've all got a lot more to give to this planet and to each other than the very sort of commercial end of design has. And I work with lots of Māori designers that work for, within the built landscape because they want to provide housing for our people, or landscape architecture because they want to restore the land, or telling our stories because that's hearing our voices again, or artists that work in the public space, because, you know, seeing our faces and our places is just, it's so incredibly important in those urban areas. When you go into and you can feel, you know, very, very foreign. So
Just now, one very short question. What has the influence of your mother been on you and your work?
is she still online? I might get incriminated by answering this question.
Yeah.
Mum, fundamental. I'd have to say there's a hell of a lot of the artist and activist and just like stand your ground, you know, that comes from Mum. We live in a matriarchal territory too, Rida. I really appreciate that our matriarchy has been like, it's been very stood on, but the roots of our whole East Coast, the territories where I brought up in, are very matriarchal. And Mum, you know, when I was a kid, started to retell our stories, much like what Sister Frida Larios is doing with her language, and some of that has been, you know, listening from her father and aunties, etc., and retelling their stories, but also her own stories of being able to what she sees in the landscape, and then she'd approach the publisher. No, I think before that she couldn't find a Māori illustrator, you know. So she decided, okay, so she's going to not only write, she's going to teach herself to paint these books. She paints the books, kind of thing. Then she approached the publishers, and the publishers, of course, go, we're not publishing Māori material. You know, you're a nutter. So she went, oh, okay, well, stuff you then. And one of her friends helped her out and gave her a little bit of money towards that, and she printed her first books herself. And I remember all of our clan turning up to the book launch at our community, like our marae, and it was packed. And, you know, she just sold the t-shirts for everybody, and like we have a communal sort of like a longhouse marae that we all sleep in, like all the pillowcases all printed out with Mum's artwork, and yeah, and Mum's books, and everybody was just so proud of it and so happy to have our stories being told. And yeah, and major children's book publisher came to that, and then picked up Mum's work from that point. So yeah, so Mum has a fundamental incriminating role in the reason why I do design and tell our stories.
Great, and we'll build up further on this when we go to Rida's story. But before we get to Rida's story, I think Sham, if you can just play one of Rida's songs that she's performed with the band, so that all the viewers here can understand that some people can be very extremely multi-dimensionally talented, and apart from other talents, they also bring it in a very constructive way for their community. So Sham, if you can just play the song.
Oh, well, traditional, where did you go? How well have they passed you on? Time aside, we're going to live the moment is to understand the past. The mercenaries gain their best, going the spiritual bed. Destroying what's in abundance, can the light to emptiness, losing our identity, value and knowledge.
I'm in the dark, stuck in darkness, swallowed by my mother's womb. It's warm and cold in the water around, trapped inside my mother's tomb. As long as I live, I feed on you, making you mine, mining you dry.
There's been war after war after war, in one form or another, destroying what coexists in harmony with nature, exploiting That what I eat, I dress, I think has a reason. History roots, but nature is still the center of identity. Mother Earth gives me life.
Hajimdo, good Hajimdo, Shapluno Kabay. Tas Kakria, Saudam, Hapo Chiptem Kabay. Kadba Kadangya, Napun Napa, Nashim Kabu, Pati Kakong Yapa.
There's been war after war after war, in one form or another, destroying what coexist in harmony with nature, exploiting both land and man in one form or another. In time I will be reborn. In time there will be plants and trees. In time the rivers will flow again. In time my land will be sacred again. In time I will be dead. In time there will be silence. In time tears run dry. In time our body will be sacred again.
Hakwe kaya, nan sa kipan, kaya chung tieng siet, kaya chung kiwa, kuwe kaya kakendo kan long bentang, kuwe kaya ngan yap, kaya cinta, kion mat kiang pat, ngan long yang kentang.
Uh, Excellent. So that was a video by Rida. And just as we've introduced the works of each person, we will start by a short introduction of Rida and see how her influence from home and her community has led her to do what she's doing. Thereafter, we will get into the last segment of the day, where we will try and explore what indigenous design means to all of us. And Desna has a lovely video to share with us on what the indigenous designers in her part of the world think about this. So a little bit about Rida. Rida Ghatphoh, she's from the Jaintia and Khasi tribes in the northeastern part of India. Wait, my screen. She's from the Jaintia and Khasi tribes of Meghalaya, is the founder of Dakti Craft, an artisan-driven venture based in Shillong, dedicated to reviving and sustaining traditional crafts through ethical, slow-made design. A design graduate from National Institute of Fashion Technology, Bangalore, She partnered with Peter Marbanyang from National Institute of Design, who also happens to be my batchmate when I was a student. They partnered in 2010 after conducting design workshops across craft clusters in Meghalaya to launch Dakti, derived from the Khasi word meaning impressions of the land. She has already spoken about that aspect. Rida's commitment lies in empowering artisans, especially potters and bamboo craftsmen, through training, ethical production, and creating meaningful market engagement. Dakti now collaborates with over more than 30 craftspeople operating a training center in Ribhoi, which is another place within the state of Meghalaya, and maintains its ethos of slow production, local sourcing, and planet-centered design. She also plays a key role with Meghalayan Age, a state enterprise and well-known label of artisanal products coming from a state. So Rida, with this, we'll just share some of the images of the products that Dakti and you intervene with the local artisans and bring it forward. It'll be interesting to understand how this story of Dakti crafts started, because for me, my limited understanding tells me that it started all with music. Music, something has been very close to you. So it'll be interesting for all of us to understand how Dakti craft started.
Yeah, thank you, Horo. And yeah, I hope you can hear me. So my journey, in fact, now we are in 2025. When I came back, it was 2009. And when I was, before coming back to Meghalaya, I was living in Bombay, in Mumbai, for a few years, where I was very much in the corporate sector, and I kind of learned a lot from that sector and came back here in the land where I came from. So when I came back to Shillong, the National Institute of Fashion Technology just opened up, and I was teaching there over 2 years. And for me, that being in this land and teaching in this space, I realized that there's so much more that I can give to the community and learn, in fact, to relearn. Because when we were put in a college or when we learned something, we were put into a situation where we were made for that kind of an environment. So for me, the corporate learning is very much there. And coming back to Meghalaya, I realized that what we have here has totally got kind of covered, and you don't see much around. You don't hear people talking about it. And being in that institute, teaching in colleges was not really my calling. So I met Peter then, and we kind of got involved with communities where we thought, why don't we explore? It was an exploration. It was a journey that took me from one part of the soil to the other. And it all came back actually when I came back home to Meghalaya in 2009. And when we tried, it was very difficult because working here in Meghalaya, it's quite a challenging sector to kind of look at how we can really create an intervention to make it an impactful and meaningful approach. So when we got together, like a few of us, there was Peter Marbanyang, there's Navakoti, who came about, and we were just exploring, traveling from one village to another. And that's when we identified one is the Wakhen, the Singrati Institute, where we thought like these are the instruments that we don't hear, because Shillong, we are known as the rock capital of India, and there's so much of influence from the Western music. I myself, being a Christian, I was in the choir for many years. But when it comes to indigenous knowledge of the kind of music that we have, we don't hear it about, and we don't really notice. So for me, as I kind of visited that village, I kind of realized that maybe we should kind of work together, collaborate, and come up with something that we can talk. And these journeys actually kind of moving from one land to another, I kind of realized seeing that there's a lot of other things, with, as you can see in the video, the mining activities, the kind of shift in the land. And being in Bombay, where you don't see trees around, and you come back to Meghalaya where you can breathe, you don't want that situation to happen here. So we kind of thought that why don't we see something and trying to do something with a little voice that we have through music. And I met these musicians who are making these instruments, and there was so much of meaning to it. In fact, I kind of learned so much that we came up with an album in 2013. The album is called Musical Nature. It was very much inspired by nature. The Kasi tradition, the belief is mostly, the very animistic way of looking at life. It's a belief system where we connect everything, because from the time we wake up, I think, to the time we sleep, we have these stories, and it's embedded in us, like in a form of a story, right from the way we name ourselves, through a sound, and we grew up with that sound. So these are things that we want to incorporate, and musical nature came up because there was a problem. And looking at the land, the scars in the land, that really moved me and really put me into a situation that I should write and see that, we can do something with the sound. And over the years, now Singh Rati Institute, the co-founders, uh, lead by Roger Bopang and lead by Malnyang, they were my co-inspirators, and they like inspired me to kind of look at that village also as a way, because when I went to that village, it was an institute, but you never see such a humble institute, where they're very much basic in their nature, and the belief system, the way they talk, the way they eat, everything around. So it really moved me, and this journey had led me from the music part, and also again traveling. We kind of realized, me coming from also Jaintia Hills, um, it was very much embedded from childhood, actually, from my grandfather. My grandfather was one of the teacher in one village in Jaintia Hills, very close to Sung Valley, where we get the clay from. So my grandfather used to farm in those lands, and we kind of know a lot about what grows and how fertile. We eat those, the Sung Valley rice, which is very special here, and also the techniques of how they cook their food. And we saw the pottery right from when we were very young. So that continued, and when I came back, I don't see that anymore, being away from the land and coming back. That really gave me a lot of questions, to kind of get an answer. And eventually, as we spend a lot of time in these villages trying to see that, okay, these are the stories that are hidden, that are unknown, and we should share it with the rest of the world because of the uniqueness, because of the, when you look at the approach, it's very holistic in nature. So that was the beginning of Dakti. It was very organic. We never planned it, and it happened. And we came up with that album. And over the years, we've been following this philosophy of, you know, coming up with eventually having a balance in life. We know that times are changing, but we kind of need to kind of weave ourselves. And so it happens with other villages. We built relationships. It's not just going there as a designer and, I learn and picked and come up with beautiful products, but there's more to just a beautiful piece. It's about that piece, in fact, that can relate to where we come from and how we bring that value. So I think that is one way how we approach the journey so far. And natural material, definitely, from the black clay to our everything. If you come to Meghalaya, you get to see that we are very blessed, and yeah, we are thankful.
Yeah, that's a fascinating story. And just the fact that your current form of business, entrepreneurship, and artisan support is all interwoven around the natural landscape and the natural offering that Meghalaya has to give, using all the indigenous methods, techniques, practices, and the interesting way that your company can put it together is quite fascinating. Now, I think now we'll move on to the last segment, where I think we need to deliberate or probably understand a little bit about what people call as indigenous design. So Frida, we'll start with you because you've not just been a design student, you've also taught design. But nowadays we hear this word going around, indigenous design, and there are lots of institutions that that are beginning to start departments or different colleges only trying to focus on indigenous studies and design. What is your take on this? How would you try to bring together or differentiate the idea of design in indigenous design? And how do you see all these institutions coming up in urban settings and urban areas trying to proclaim that they are the ones who are going to teach us indigenous design? So Frida first, then Desna, and then Rida.
Very interesting question. Thank you. Well, I think the question is kind of, I sense a little bit of irony in the rhetoric question, but maybe it's just me. But definitely, I think in El Salvador, I could say in Central America, maybe not in Mexico. Mexico has a very strong sovereign a landscape in indigenous design, in which the communities have taken almost, you know, they're leaders of their own stories and weavings. But in Central America, it's different, it's the opposite, and there's more colonial structures embedded and you know, a lot of racism, and universities here, at least locally, they're not even embracing, how would you say, an indigenous design department, not even that. And so I teach the branding subject at my university here, Escuela de Comunicación Mónica Herrera. And I call my classroom a safe space. Since I was also living in Washington, I was an immigrant in the US also, as you know, for 15 years or more. So the classroom becomes a decolonial space, yet the colonial structure is very strong, and also the assimilation in our, you know, urban setting. So it's, you know, if we had an indigenous design department, that would be even good, but there's not even that. So just to put things in perspective, because it's gonna be very interesting to hear, you know, Rida's experience, lived experience, and then Desna's, and you know, it's gonna interconnect and just give a perspective of how distant. But in the US, where I also taught for like a decade, I taught at University of the District of Columbia, and that was a Black-led university. And that experience was, it was very enriching, because you know, Black stories were at the forefront, and I had 95% of Black and Indigenous students, and so that was very fun. But then American University is, like the name itself tells it, is American. It's 90% white. So the total opposite in the same Washington, D.C., capital of the US. You know, very white, more suburban neighborhoods, still in Washington, in the north, and then in the south, I was teaching, you know, to Black and Indigenous students. So, and I think that's similar I guess, in different parts or territories. So in American university, students were paying $80,000 tuition per year. So, you know, millionaires attending the university. So very hard to you know, to be a drop in the ocean, but still, you know, doing the work as a teacher. When you're a teacher, as you know, it's just a calling, and it's you just do it because, you know, the little difference that you can make, you know, with a little group of students every year, and yeah, that's my experience
Yeah.
from my side.
Yeah, and now
Thank
maybe we
you.
can hear from Desna on her perspective on this. Desna?
Kia ora for asking that, Horo. I know that, yeah, as Frida said, well, alluded to, we've all had some really, really difficult, difficult times with institutions. And yes, I mean, I can share similar stories about sort of university and not having, I think there were 100 kids when I first went to university to study visual communications, and there were 2 of us that were Māori, kind of thing. And yeah, well, a couple of things I think that it's kind of useful to think about. The whole academic system, academia, yeah, and the way that we kind of understand it now, or the vast majority of it, which is a very westernized system, and the way that it's constructed, and because it is, like, it has been monetized, and courses or material that is developed is seen as owned by the institute. The whole system really questions what the purpose of our knowledge is, I think, and the way that Indigenous knowledge systems have always operated with our ancestors is not abstracted. It's very connected to your people, and it's very connected to your place, and it's knowledge that's learnt for a purpose, you know, and that has responsibilities that come with it. And you learn that through your entire life, because you learn that in amongst your community. So you are always answerable to the people that have gifted you that knowledge and the place that has gifted you that knowledge, and you have a reciprocal relationship with place. So that fundamental understanding about the way that we learn and why we learn, which is a knowing, doing, being, you know, it's embodied practice as well, and it's relational, is pretty much fundamentally the opposite of, like, Western academies, yeah? And so they'll look across all of our different types of work, which is like, by the way, thank you, sisters. It's such a privilege to be looking at it and seeing some of your work here today. But they'll be looking at their work and thinking that they can pick up some uku, some clay from Rida's area, and find something that's a similar colour and do a similar shape, and it's going to be Indigenous design. Or, you know, like Frida's extremely, you know, identifiable graphic style in the Mayan hieroglyphs, and, you know, I think, okay, so we can just pick that up from her and then we'll put it on something else and it's still going to be Indigenous. And that is, it's just fundamentally wrong, yeah? So if you don't have the people that it's connected to and the place that it's connected to, it stops being Indigenous, it stops having that purpose. And that's what we've always, you know, with Ngā Aho, which, thank you, Horo, for offering to show us one of our videos of our elders later on. That's a lot of what we've sought to do with my mentors that I've worked with, is how do we give our students, our next generation, who we very much care about, who have to go through those tertiary institutes, but how do we give them an opportunity to be able to bring their skills home and to reconnect with home and to meet some other Māori designers that are out there, because there's not there. Well, previously there hasn't been a hell of a lot, and so it can be quite isolating going to tertiary institutes. So giving our next generations an opportunity to spend some time alongside senior Indigenous designers and doing things with their communities, and then that, you know, it's healthy for them in terms of regenerating their relationships with home, giving them a sense of identity, which quite often is being colonised away from them, and once they're at tertiary, or maybe for a few generations. But also hopefully helps everybody to flick that other switch. That I wouldn't say I'm not a designer. A design is one pen that I pick up, or you may be a musician. You may produce music. You may produce art. You may produce words. You may produce gardens. All of these things. You are not the thing that you make. These are a whole lot of range of tools, and again, I think that's a shift in the way we understand our knowledge. Is that these are knowledge sets and skills that we pick up. When you start thinking of it the other way around, either that the Institute might own your Indigenous IP, which is just absurd, or that you are your pen, then you become an industrialized kind of object yourself. But yeah. And also, the thing is, because the more interest and that there grows internationally, and because we're unique, and because actually Indigenous have got a hell of a lot to offer with our current climate, crises that's going on, the more desperate the institutes are to pick up our knowledge and take it away from the people. They don't want the people in the responsibility often. They just want to be able to pick up the aesthetics of it, kind of thing, because it's another thing that could be sold. So, even with, United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, etc., looking after IP, it's still a really hard battle for us all of the time.
It's interesting, Desna, you've actually covered lots of ground and lots of complex areas that needs to be probably discussed, resolved, and made the world more aware of this. With this, we'll move to Rida. Rida, what would your thoughts be? After your thoughts, I will probably give my 2 sentences of thought, and then we can play the lovely video that Desna had shared for all our understanding into what indigenous design might actually mean in the context of one community. But from that, I think we can draw and lots of learnings from our own communities. So Rida, your perspective.
Yes. Thank you, Horo. So for me, like I said, when I came back, I was in teaching for 2 years with National Institute of Fashion Technology. For me, I felt like I was in these 4 walls, where I could not really look at how we can learn further, because I feel like times have changed and the system has also needs a change. And especially when we look at the way we experience things, especially in communities like us, which is a very minority. And when we have to kind of transcend that knowledge and put it in institutions, like for me, I learned, like my musical album came from an institute called Singrati Institute, which is a very small, it's a hut basically, I would say. And the people over there that kind of nurture that place were the ones who really are practicing it. It's not just, you come there and it's not in theory alone, but it's also the practice. So being in an institute and trying to also learn from the indigenous community gives me a kind of a wider perspective in how we look at the way we approach, especially in design thinking. And also when it comes to the sustainable approach of how we use, especially the materials that we have, they're very precious to us, especially when we talk about IP, the intellectual property rights. Like we just got a GI tag for our black clay pottery because of the uniqueness, and also from where the land it comes from and how we extract. Those are the things which are priceless. You don't just learn it like that. You have to be a part of that. And then eventually, when we have to bring them into a learning system, then there has to be something that is, being a part of an institute where we have to follow certain norms. Because when you talk about an institute being across India, you have South India, you have the western part of India, then you have the northeastern part of India. There has to be a highlight in those lands, because design is also very much integrated to the place where you are. That's where you draw your inspiration. That's where you kind of also really learn practically. We were also a part of many training programs as ductee. As we moved on, I came out of that four wall of a classroom, but we were also put into a situation where we were supposed to do skill development here in Meghalaya. So we have the Meghalaya Skill Development, where it's a part of the labor department. And over there also, when you have to kind of bring knowledge, in the system of learning, when it comes to craft, we don't have a classroom, we don't have a timing. It's all seasonal. So for us, it's about, adapting to that system rather than changing that. Sometimes we have advisors who come, we have facilitators, they call themselves, they come. But until unless you belong to this community where you learn from the people, how can you really prove the worth of that learning when we have to change things? So I think it's very important that we consider that, being a part of that system is also to acknowledge the rest of the environment along. Like, for example, at the moment we are doing a textile training with the textile department. We have to kind of revive certain textile motifs. So we have various clans and tribes here in Meghalaya. And when you talk about our textiles, the way we produce, the way we rear the cocoons, how we kind of the methods, from the twisting to the colors that we get, it's all a part of the land system we have, and they are seasonal, and you have to be able to adapt to that system as well. And now these stories are actually again slowly disappearing, especially when it comes to the real meaning, because we have a lot of influences also in our belief system. So sometimes we are not allowed to practice because it's not a part of the system anymore. We will look at as backwards. So most of these knowledge are disappeared, and now I'm currently working with the tree tribes in Ribhoi, which is the Khadarlingdo. They are the priesthood community. And then we have the Karbi, which is again bordering Assam and Meghalaya. And then again, there is a community there which is split into two, and you don't know whether they belong here or there. So when you talk about their stories, when you look at their motives, and when you want to understand how they have a part of their rituals, a part of their existence, so these all needs to have a proper way of putting it into a system, so that it's not just diluted, it's not just interpreted within a frame so that it's convenience, but it has to be done in a way that we can really value that system and really take it to the next level. And yeah, so that is very important for looking at how we take these systems, because we don't see that. We have to do a craft documentation, we follow those the tech packs that were given to us, and we can't go beyond that. So I think there has to be freedom, there has to be a way of more openness to it. It's not just the four walls, but nature as well is very much, especially when it comes to the land, then you have to be a part of it and take it forward according to the systems. Thank you.
Yeah, really, very eloquently put, Rida. And actually, my limited take on this would be, I think the key lies in the word itself. When people say indigenous design, in that term, there is this word called indigenous. What does indigenous actually mean? It means local to the place or to the community that belongs there. How can you teach something that is indigenous to a particular community or a place and bring it into a classroom in an urban setting and develop a curriculum and a framework and expect your students to understand that, where these students would probably not even have experienced a rain or a monsoon in the place or the community that they're dealing with? When we say that a particular design institution has multiple branches all across the country, have we ever asked ourselves, why is it that there is not a single institution that caters to a particular community in a geography, where the teachers are the knowledge keepers? Teachers are people who have learned their knowledge from lived experience. Indigenous knowledge, indigenous design cannot, I simply fail to accept that it can be taught by someone who has not have had the lived experience coming from a particular community. And in India, we have 705 plus communities. How would you want to homogenize all these things coming from different geographies, different landscapes, different ecology, different visual culture, different material culture, and one expects to create a framework that is going to work for all. I think this is a question of tribal design sovereignty. And this is something that we should look at, because if every community looks and focuses at their area, because this is also a form of intergenerational knowledge transfer, which is something that we are failing to do, which is why people in my generation or below us, or the generation after us, we don't know the language. All our knowledge system is in the language. Design schools fail to understand that indigenous knowledge is encoded in the language system. And I sometimes feel sad that I'm part of that transitional generation that is gradually losing out on language. So it is quite a complex thing, but I think for all institutions that claim to be the gatekeepers and curriculum providers to rest of the world on indigenous or tribal design, I think they need to understand things better even before they can start dipping their hands into it. Oh, I thought I was going to say only 2 sentences. But anyway, so with that, it's been lovely chatting and getting to have different perspectives from different geographies. But since we are talking about indigenous knowledge systems, I think watching the video and how our elders and knowledge keepers are important for all indigenous communities, I think Desna's video would be probably very apt. And with that, we'll play the video. We'll have a short summarization by Anugrah, and then we shall close the session.
To practice a meaningful design process, what are the key elements of our connection? It's all our narratives, from the creation narrative and all the way through there. I'm fascinated by the depth of knowledge, the quality of the understanding of place. That's all there, you know, to be explored in a creative process.
We've started to talk about what a Maori design process might be. We know what the Western process is, you know, it's quite linear. But Arnold Wilson gave us the thing of, you know, going back to Te Kori, you know, whakapaparing back to Te Kori, to the point of nothingness. And then from there, everything's possible. It's kind of like clearing the decks and looking at something with fresh eyes. You're not conditioned by an idea of what you need to know, even, you know, or what you should be.
A key for Māori is that we as people are not separate from environment and separate from Papatūānuku and Ranginui. We're all part of nature. Everything is interconnected, and so it's not different professions standing individually, it's together, and one group with ideas from one strand isn't superior to any other. That's another key thing.
For too long, consultation by organisations with Māori has been too late. Should have started right at the very beginning. It is about sharing tikanga, and they're particularly important when it comes to land things to do with land. And when it's a specific project, it's good often to, you know, say, shall we develop a kaupapa together?
Whatungaro tangata toi tu te whenua. People come and go, but land endures. For Māori, landscape architecture is made for us because it involves elements that we're comfortable with. The fundamental non-negotiable parts of it are to do with the recognition of mana and that concept of mana whenua, mana mōna, mana tangata. The importance of Māori, of ensuring that Māori is enhanced and not diminished in the work that we do. The element of whakapapa, the concept of collaboration and of iteration and a collective view. It's not that Māori designers have a monopoly on that way of thinking, but it's certainly elements that you can expect a Māori designer to consider important.
A lot of our cultural affinity is with materials that we connect with, but we're in a situation where a lot of those materials are now gone in a short period of time. So what we've got to do is adapt, and if we're looking at traditions, our traditions aren't red, black and white in a koru, really. Those are cultural conventions. Our tradition is innovation.
I personally am always doing my best to reflect who we are, particularly to reconnect us with our roots, because so much of that I've discovered has been lost through colonisation. So I know that's a common story, and it's, you can really turn it into a very tearful lament, but actually to take it and use it positively and create force out of it, create a whole new energetic engagement with it, I think is the way that I've chosen to go.
I don't think people understand that having an iwi-centric kind of foundation will really benefit all. It's time that people felt like they are tangata whenua, all people.
Thank you, Māori Association of Designers, for that lovely video to encapsulate what exactly we are trying to explore and discover here for each of our own communities. This last round, maybe we can just have a closing comment from each person so that we can then come to the conclusion, which Anugrah will be summarizing this for us. So Frida, if you can start your closing comments, maybe we can keep it short.
My closing comments are thank you for this interunion and interdialogue that happened today on this meaningful day, and I'm left with a lot of learnings and relearnings from my sisters and brother Sudhir. Thank you. And thank you to Desna. Muchas gracias, Padiush, for sharing the video and seeing elders practicing design, elders tell their perspectives, and from a contemporary standpoint is important. If you can share the link, please. That would be great. And also I shared my PDF of my book to share with with everyone on the on here on this virtual platform. Thank you to all who have been here.
We will mail that book to all those who have joined in, because we have their email addresses. For people joining us on YouTube, well, you always have the choice of joining in through Zoom. Some are winners, some are losers. So, Desna, how about you?
Kia ora, just to echo, it's really beautiful to be able to share some space and time and thought with you all today, and to connect with some new whānau, some new other Indigenous designers. It's really good to have, a mixture of heartwarming stories from all of your different territories. That I can, that I connect with, to be able to see your mountains and your bush and your rivers and your clays, and your animals. All of these things really, really meaningful today. And also to have some of those gritty conversations, about our IP and the challenges that we face in terms of the institutionalization of our knowledge and what that actually means for us, it's a very real battle, and it's playing out in all sorts of ways which are well beyond, our earnings and our own sort of, well, it includes our earnings, our authorship, but also, the risk is our people and our places. If we don't actually, pay attention to that, it's much, much more than our back pocket. So yeah, thank you for raising some difficult topics too. And yeah, I mean, just love to stay in touch. I really appreciate all the work that you go to put together Tribal Design Forum. It's not an easy thing to do, and to keep that traction going. So yeah, thank you, ngā mihi, for all of your hard work.
Thank you, Desna. Rida, for you?
Okay. Again, as a child, I thought we are all indigenous people, and the world was very small then, but we are somewhat related in some way or the other. We're supposed to be here in my community, especially as women, we are supposed to be the custodian of the land we are born in. So I use my sustainable craft practices as a reminder of our connect to the environment. Also, while working with crafts community and working with natural materials, recycling, reusing, incorporating traditional knowledge and skills. This requires a lot of interventions, between nature and our thinking. And reminding us that we too are seasonal in nature. We're humans, we are humans in nature. So it is a slow and a longer process, but it is the only valid way, to move forward. And the future, I think, of indigenous people and communities will depend on how we live the indigenous way. And it's not just talking about it, but also live the indigenous way. And it's not about the title or the tag, but a way of life. That's what I believe in. It's a way of life in the past, and currently we are living it now, and we look forward for the future. Thank you, Horo, for this beautiful session that you've put us together, and really appreciate that we are connected on this platform. I think it's a very important topic to talk about and share our thoughts, because we are all different, even though we come from various parts of the world. So this really gonna make an impact, and I wish to stay connected in this forum and, learn more from each one of you. And yeah, wish you all the very best. Thank you.
Awesome, Rita. Very well put. I think I just want to close with one quote that I had heard from JFA Greenaway when he came to present at Tribal Design Forum. The first sentence that said, "We have always been designers. We were the first designers." And since I read that, I tried to understand and look deeper into it. And I realized, yes, because today when we start understanding design in a design institution, design thinking, design systems, the indigenous people were always practicing that, because without having evolved and developed their own mechanisms and systems of sustaining themselves, these communities would never have been alive today. The fact that most of these communities are in very so-called hostile conditions or different landscapes and ecologies, they have found a way to adapt. And that way of adaptation is something that has been passed on from generation to generation. And sadly, today, when we look to appreciate and understand the visual and material culture, we forget that there is a component called the indigenous knowledge system that is being transferred from our ancestors. It has the blessing of the spirits. The worldview is different. The mentality, mindset is different. We adapt more to seasons rather than the 9 to 5 hours that we see in a different environment. But we're expected to perform in that particular manner. So there is lots of dichotomies. But what I have really not heard from people is to ask and say, what is it that we can learn from indigenous communities or tribal communities in India? I have always heard we are going to teach tribal people how to do design, how to create something, how to create a system. I think most of the institutions need to take a stop, pause, reflect, Because if the institutions in this country and other parts of the world do not recognize and acknowledge that, then everything that the UN says, all the laws, bylaws, all that fails. Sometimes I get quite amused when I hear this line that says, leave no one behind. But no one tells us the context. Where do you want us to leave us behind? Where are you headed? We don't know where the destination is. Can you first tell us about the destination? Can you then tell us, ask us if you have your consent to take us there? And then instead of leaving no one behind, have we ever thought that in most of our indigenous communities, we don't leave people behind. We walk along with them. But here, you don't want to walk along with us, you want to drag us along. I think that will be my last quote. And thank you all lovely ladies for making time. Frida waking up at 4:30, Desna staying up at 10:30, dragging her entire family together. And I think this is a very joyful celebration of World Indigenous Day. When technology allows us to interact, why should Indigenous people not be interacting more often? And thank you, Rida, for your lovely stories and songs. And thank you all wonderful people for having taken time out to sit through this long session. And as said earlier, that this session will be very informal. We do not want to follow given formal set of things to do. We would go with the flow. My role was only to ask questions, but here comes the most important and the difficult part. Anugrah, before you say that I'm throwing you under the bus, I had already warned you. Please close the session for us, Anugrah.
Thank you so much for giving me this time. Thank you so much to our speakers also for this powerful conversation that we had. And I believe that it's also such a needed conversation. I'm a very firm believer of reinforcement because in today's time, our entire attention span is only of like 30 seconds maximum. So somebody needs to keep on reminding us of our value because over the years as Indigenous people, we've kind of like accepted the narrative that we are lesser than. And we need to have conversations such as this that remind us that it is we ourselves who have to put value upon ourselves. It is only then that our knowledge systems are going to get prominence. Otherwise, we will no longer be the owners and authors of our knowledge systems. I really when I heard about institutions being gatekeepers of the knowledge that goes out there, it really struck me because I am from an academic background and I was like, oh, so whatever I write, whatever I do is now going to be owned by the institutions. But wait, it's not about the institutions, it's about the community, the knowledge that I have. Again, it's not just my own, it's all the stories and narratives of the community that I'm bringing along and I'm just sharing. I'm just being a medium to share it. So then, now, if we are not aware, if we do not like own ourselves, our identity, and kind of like slowly but steadily reclaim our own knowledge systems, then maybe over, somewhere down the line, we will all be spectators of our own knowledge systems. So to have the three of you here who's kind of like walked on the path of reclaiming the knowledge, I'm sure has been an encouragement for all of us here. And of course, you do come from a matrilinear community, so maybe you've seen a lot of strong women, but a lot of us don't come from that. A lot of us, when women speak, we are like, oh, so women are speaking. There's always like a question. So I believe that even though we say we're Indigenous people, we are still in the large domain in a lot of spaces and places where still our narratives are still being told by men. No? So to have a space where even women are getting that space to speak, to tell the stories, to be a part of the narrative, I feel like I'm sure it's a big encouragement for all of us here as well. And not all of us are designers here, so I don't want any of us to feel excluded, because when we watch the video, there's the lady there talked about like how not every different profession is standing alone, no, but it's all of us coming together to create and design something. So all of us are designers in our own aspects. And the way of Indigenous life is a holistic one. When I imagine Indigenous life, Indigenous ways of knowledge system, I see it like a web. Everything joins together. You don't know where it begins, you don't know where it ends. So maybe some of us are the last thread, some of us are right in the middle, but we come together to create that web of knowledge. And before I end, because I can just go on rambling, maybe that's why I'm thrown under the bus most of the time. I really want to like retell what Rida said, that it is important for us to kind of put it into the way of life. It should not just be mouth service. Now, all of us here, when we talk about intergenerational transference of knowledge, all of us, we cannot just only do mouth service and say that, oh, intergenerational knowledge is going to transfer. It also has to be a lot of action should be there. So, of course, we are celebrating the World Indigenous Day and celebrating ourselves today. But it is also very important for us to know and remember that we don't need a day to celebrate us. It is very important that we celebrate ourselves every single day, own our identity, own who we are, own our knowledge systems, and most importantly, own our own narrative and take great pride in being indigenous. Yesterday we had a speaker at Moko, and he sung this beautiful song where he's used the word savage and owned the word savage. And for so long we've been called savage. We've been called people who live in the villages. If they term it as derogatory, let's own it and make so much more meaning out of it and tell us that yes, we are savage, but we are savage with a lot of value, and this is the value we bring to the table. So I hope this Indigenous Day, we've learned so much from each other, and this learning will not just be limited to ourselves. We've been equipped today. Now that we've been equipped, let us go out and move into the ways of life and equip others also along the way, so that we have this beautiful intergenerational transference of knowledge, culture, and our web of Indigenous knowledge system just continues to grow, and that our authorship and ownership of who we are begins from us and it is not taken away from us. So thank you so much everyone for being here. Thank you to all our speakers. I'm sure everybody's learned a lot from you today. Thank you to also our audience who's here. Without you, these things would be just conversations, but you are here, and that this also like encourages us also to kind of like continue doing these kind of things. You show interest and we are here, and you show solidarity, and here we are. So thank you so much for being here and giving us so much of your time. And on behalf of Tribal Design Forum, I want to thank you all once again and wish you all a happy World Indigenous Day. Let's celebrate ourselves every single day. Okay, let's do that every single day. And then, I look forward to having you join us as we celebrate our indigeneity and as we celebrate how we are reimagining ourselves, and we're telling our world also about the tribal futures, what it looks like, and how we ourselves are reclaiming our futures. And as we continue to have a lot of discourses in the days to come, I hope that all of us can come together, learn from each other, and equip ourselves much more so that we can continue to equip the generations to come. So thank you so much, everyone. And I believe this brings us to the end of our session today.
Lovely, Anugrah. Thank you. I think this has been one of the most productive and constructive and very satisfying World Indigenous Day for me. Desna, Frida, thank you so much for making time out, because these are very odd hours. And Rida, thank you for sharing wonderful stories and making us realize people from our own country, the richness and the importance of our own tribal communities. So with that, Anugrah, thank you for very well summarizing everything that was discussed today. I just outsourced it to you because you can do a much better job. And it is just symbolic that it is the young people like you who are willing to step up and express your own thoughts in the most meaningful manner. So everyone, thank you. Bye-bye. I wish I knew all the send away greetings for Desna,
Kublai,
Frida, and
Kublai,
Rida.
Kublai,
I only
and
know Kublai.
Kublai.
Yeah, but Frida, what did it be for you?
Yektunal. Have a good day.
Simple. And
Yektunal.
Desna?
Ah,
Yet to name.
Maori ora. To be well.
Mario. Everyone, please take care, enjoy yourselves, and we shall stay connected. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
So, people, if you can just play the last song for us so that we can disappear while that song plays. Bye-bye. Lovely joining and interacting with each one of you.